Welcome to episode 1 of NBA By Jellyman. You're with Lucas Jellyman. So this is a segment of Sports Tips by Jellyman, a sort of cut-off version, a podcast or YouTube or video. Quite lengthy sometimes, depending obviously what's gone on in the week. But for this episode, we want to cover off previewing all 30 teams. So each side's roster, depth and changes throughout the off-season and in the early season, key player stats, key games in the first week, and then also how we see them going forward in season 22-23. Now, some of them might be bang on, some of them might be close, some of them might be completely opposite. That's obviously previewing the season as usual. We'll also cover off season team awards, so who we think maybe in the championship, who could be a smoky, and then player team awards and how that all works. And then going forward, we want to do an episode every Monday or Tuesday morning. So Monday evening, Tuesday morning, sort of hopefully, like we see in the US, that will cover off them obviously having a lot of games on that Sunday, early to end of the day, and then we can review them all on the Monday evening or Tuesday morning, and then covering off maybe big performances, big wins, upset, surprise performances, then previewing the upcoming week, so big games, matchups, travel, potential blowouts, potential close games, all that sort of jazz, and then last but not least, discussion of stats and insights. So we want to make sure we're covering off for the average punter, hottest point scorers that week or most consistent, consistent rebounders, consistent assist men as well. So covering off all that fun stuff, not really covering any of the news. There's plenty of profiles that already do that, and then there's plenty of channels that already discuss the news. So we want to be a bit different. We want to cover off, your stats, your insights that can help people to obviously punt better throughout the NBA season, but then also just gain some insights and knowledge from someone else who isn't up on the TV every day of the week. But look, I'll crack straight into it. So obviously first up is the team by team previews. So with the Atlanta Hawks, so I'll open up their roster and depth chart here. They were 43 and 39 last season, which was 8th in the East. They averaged 113 points per game, so quite high compared to the average amount of teams. 44 rebounds and 24 assists. Obviously a lot of them coming through Trae Young. John Collins was out for a lot of the season. Clint Capella the same. They had a lot of injuries through their depth. They actually added DeJounte Murray from the Spurs. Their depth at the moment is their depth was good throughout the season showing, but they didn't have their full depth. So if they can stay healthy, like their starting lineup, Young, Murray, Hunter, Collins, Capella, it's a hell of a starting lineup. Hunter obviously brings a lot of good defense, but it'll be interesting to see how they go with Young and Murray. Then their second tier is obviously Aaron Holiday, Bogdanovic, Holiday, Justin Holiday, and Okongwu. So they're obviously 4 backup players. Bogdanovic is good. Okongwu actually showed some good defense, but the Holiday brothers just unsure how they will go on defense in that second unit. So our biggest concern for the Hawks this season is defense. We know they can score the ball through Young, Murray assisting, getting out the break. Hunter obviously brings that defense. Collins at times brings that defense, but can get lost. And then Capella, obviously the big man, he's good at protecting the rim, but through that mid-range area, he really does struggle. Moving on to the stats, so Trae Young averaged 28 points and 9 assists this season. It'll be interesting to see if his points go up and his assists drop with Murray on the team and potentially handing the ball more. Now, Murray for the Spurs averaged 21 points, 8 rebounds, and 9 assists. It'll be interesting to see how that goes as well. So Young and Murray together, it's an interesting combo. We saw a little bit of it in the preseason, but it's hard to judge in the preseason because they're only playing 15 to 20 minutes each. Key games in the first week, they've actually quite an easy run. They've got Houston, Orlando, and Charlotte. So Charlotte, we obviously know where they're at. We'll cover off them later. But all 3 games should be 3-0 by the time we potentially do the next podcast. And then after that, they have the Detroit Pistons consistently. So first 5 games of the season, they should be 5-0. So how we see them going this year, they could be anywhere from 6th to 10th, depending on how Murray and Young gel. And then Murray gels with the rest of the team. But our biggest concern, as we already mentioned, is how do they go on defense? Does Nate McMillan have them firing on defense, or are they 50-50 on defense and more about just scoring the ball and getting out in transition? That'll be an interesting one anyway. So Hawks, 6th to 10th. could be anywhere within that range. They should really make the playoffs with the squad they've got. Maybe they make another trade for some depth throughout the year. Who knows? But that 6th to 10th range is where we see them. We actually personally see them probably that 9th to 10th, maybe the playing game again. They're not going to improve by a heck of a lot with just bringing Murray in because they still struggle on the defensive end. Next now is the Boston Celtics. So Boston finished obviously 51 and 31 last season, which were good for second in the East, and they obviously went to the NBA Finals against the Warriors and obviously lost. They averaged 111 points last season, 46 rebounds and 24 assists. So around that sort of average mark, just above average. They've obviously added Malcolm Brogdon, which is a good add, but it'll be interesting to see how he fits in with your Smart, Tatum, Brown. They obviously lost Robert Williams for a little bit at the start of the season due to his knee, but Al Horford will plug a hole and Al Horford in the finals was incredible. In the playoffs last year was actually really good for them and probably got them to where they ended up being. But we'll see how he sort of comes back. Is he fit and healthy still? Or has he sort of added another year to that body? And here we go. Unfortunately, they actually brought in Gallinari as well, but he did his ACL in the overseas tournament. So it'll be interesting to see how, I guess, Brogdon fits in. He'll probably come off the bench to start with, but then will they just end up playing, Smart, Brown, Tatum, Horford, and Brogdon all together, and maybe leave Grant Williams and Blake Griffin to the bench. So obviously they brought in Blake Griffin as well, which was just recent. They should have a high ceiling once again. Obviously there was the drama with the coach and having interim coach stand in for this season. Will that affect him, or will Tatum and Brown just take over anyway? It'll more or less affect them probably towards the back end of the season or in close games when the coach has to draw up a play or draw up a winning play. But I feel like Tatum and Brown are at that stage in the career where they could probably take the board and, they can run the offense through that. Moving on to key player stats. Tatum, he averaged 26 points, 8 rebounds and 4 assists. So 20 plus points in 62 of 76 games. So if you're looking at a 20 plus points market to add in time to time, obviously it'd be Tatum. Brown, he averaged 23 points, 6 rebounds and 3 assists. 20 plus points in 45 of 66 games. 4 plus rebounds actually in 53 of 66 games. So his 4 plus rebounds market at stages will be a lot lower, depending on who's playing. For the start of the season, I'd say both of those would be quite high because Robert Williams isn't playing. It'll be Al Horford. So Tatum will likely play the 4 with Horford at the 5, with Brown probably at the 3, and then Smart and who else. It depends if they play Blake Griffin as a big as well. Key games in their first week, they've actually got the 76ers at home to kick off the season. Now, a little insight tip, we're actually looking at the 76ers for that one, even in Boston. Just the Celtics having that short turnaround, all the drama, and the 76ers, how deep they are. We can see them sort of being the underdog in that one and sort of getting over the top of them. They've then got the Heat away and then Magic away. So Heat will be another tough game. So 2 tough games to start the season, but then the Magic to back it off before we obviously do our next one. As we already mentioned, addition of Brogdon is really interesting. How will the new coach go? Their over-unders set at 53.5 wins. They did get 51 last year, but can they improve once again? They did have a slow start to last season, and then obviously finished at the back end of the season to finish second. So it depends if they get a quick start once again, or are they a bit clunky at the start. But Celtics should be around that 1 to 4 mark in the East, no lower than that. We see them finishing around 2nd or 3rd once again. They've got the team to do it, but we still don't think they can get over the hump of the championship just without a head coach and potentially another couple of key pieces. But once again, it'll come down to injuries throughout the season and who stays healthy. Can Robert Williams stay healthy throughout the whole season and then in the playoffs? Can Horford keep that same level of play he did last season in the playoffs? Do Tatum and Brown take another step? How does Smart and Brogdon work together? How does Brogdon fit in, and can he stay healthy as well? So the Celtics overall, they should be good throughout the season and obviously into playoffs as well. Moving on to the Brooklyn Nets. So the Brooklyn Nets, 44 and 38 last season, 7th in the East, lost to the Celtics in round 1. Obviously, all the drama throughout Brooklyn last year, Durant, Kyrie, Simmons coming in, they're not playing, Harden moving away. Ever since they brought 3 guys together, there's just been ups and downs. But now we feel like this team this season, they last season averaged 112 points, 44 rebounds and 25 assists, and that was really with only one of the two star players playing at any one stage. We'll just open up their obviously full roster and depth chart here. They've actually gained some quite good depth. So Joe Harris comes back from injury. He hardly played any games last year. I can't even remember if he did play games. Simmons obviously included as well. So he'll play the 4, Durant will play the 3, Harris the 2, Irving the 1. And then you've got Claxton, who had another year to improve and work off these guys. And then on the bench, you got Mills, Curry, O'Neal, TJ Warren's coming to this team now. Now he's out still, but that's a good little addition that no one's really talking about. They also gave time to Sharp, Thomas. They put in Markieff Morris now as well. So, and Edwards as well. He got some more time last season. So this Nets team, I think, is built the right way. Now, can all of their stars play all their games? Does Ben Simmons' back tighten up again? Does Durant get injured? Does Irving play all your games? If that's no, well, you can sort of put their championship hopes sort of towards the side. But if it's yes, I think they're a real good run at the championship this season. And, Kyrie hasn't aged still. Like, he's still as good as he is. And it'll be an interesting, obviously, concept bringing Simmons in as well. So it adds a bit of defense with Claxton as well next to him. And Durant, when he likes, and Irving, when he likes, can play defense as well. So you've got a side there that could cause some upsets throughout the season, and they should win a lot of games compared to the 44 last season. They should improve heavily of that and be around that 52, 53 mark in the East and finish from that 1st to 4th as well. Moving on to some stats. So Kevin Durant, he averaged 29.7 rebounds and 6 assists in the games he played. So he played 55 games last season. 25 points in 42 of 55 games. Now Irving, he averaged 27 points, 4 rebounds and 5 assists. He only played 29 games, had 20 plus points in 22 of 29 games. So obviously those two as a combo. And then even through the preseason, just looking at how Simmons can set them both up, they just get easy buckets off of him. He just finds him in space, and Durant will have a lot of easy jumpers this season with just obviously Simmons feeding him the ball, and then those quick transition plays that he can get out in. Their first week, how that looks is they've got the Pelicans, so that'll be a good game if Zion plays, and the Pelicans have full depth. The Raptors at home, and then on the road to Memphis and Milwaukee. So 4 games in that first week and a half or so that will really test them, Memphis are good, Milwaukee are good, the Raptors are always good with their starting 5. The Pelicans built into the playoffs last season just by the skin of their teeth. So that'll be an interesting first week to sort of test them, see how they gel together. It'll probably take about 20, 30 games for them all to come together and gel. But once that happens, if they're all healthy, they could be a scary side this season. Moving on to the Charlotte Hornets. So this is one of the teams we have falling off quite a bit. So they're 43 and 39 last season, which is good for 10th in the East. Obviously lost in the playing game. They average 115 points per game, so one of the higher points per games in the league. 44 rebounds per game, and 28 assists per game. So unfortunately, they had no notable signings. They lost Montrezl Harrell. It looks like LaMelo might be out for the start of the season with his ankle injury that he just sustained. So their sort of depth chart looks like Ball, Rozier, Hayward, Washington, Plumlee. And then they've got Smith Jr., Martin, Oubre Jr., Nick Daniels, and Williams. And obviously they're missing Miles Bridges for the start of the season as he's sort of wrapped up in his case. We won't go too much into it because that's the news side of things. But yeah, we see them potentially being a team that falls off at the start of the season, especially if Ball's out. I mean, Hayward's added another year to his body, and can he come back and shoot the ball well? Defense will be their big struggle once again. Their team isn't notably good defensively. Plumlee gets lost, although he's a good rim protector. Washington is a small ball sort of 4. And then you've got Hayward, Rozier, and Ball. So Ball, not a notable defender. Rozier can play one-on-one at times, but not a notable defender again. So they may be able to score the ball at times with their 3-point shooting, especially at home. But on the road, they will probably struggle. Moving up to some stats. So Ball averaged 20 points, 6 rebounds, 7 assists. Rozier averaged 19 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists. And then Miles Bridges, who, as we said, sort of not playing for the start of the season, averaged 20 points, 7 rebounds. 15 points for Ball in 59 of 75 games, 4 plus rebounds, 69 of 75, 4 plus assists, and 65 of 75. Rozier, 15 plus points in 53 of 73 games. And then sort of their key games in the first week or so. So they've got the Spurs which is quite an easy matchup, but it's at San Antonio, so that'll be an interesting one. It's really 50-50. Pelicans, I think the Pelicans get that one done in Charlotte. The Hawks at the Hawks, and then the Knicks at the Knicks. So it depends how the Knicks are looking as well. I guess some insights would be opposition teams' points against. So if a team comes up against them, look at their top players' points over or the total team points over. Balls, rebounds, and assists. So LaMelo Ball, rack up the rebounds and assists as he did last year, and then Rozier points over. So especially if Ball's out at the start of the season, look for Rozier to be scoring the ball a lot more efficiently. Moving on to the Chicago Bulls. So they're another team we have slightly dropping off this season just because of how strong the East is. So they were 46-36 last season, which was good for 6th in the East. They lost in the first round to the Bucks. And they averaged 111 points per game, 42 rebounds, 23 assists. They added Drummond and Dragic, so a good bit of depth there. They've also got, let me just get up their depth chart. So their starting lineup is Sumu, Levine, DeRozan, Williams, Vucevic, and then on the bench they've got Dragic, Caruso, Green, Drummond. So they've got a good bit of depth there. They've also got Jones Jr. and Bradley. So the depth is there for the Bulls, but our biggest worry is how good the East is and who they come up against. Now, Williams and Dosunmu should take another jump, but they don't have a traditional point guard to sort of run the offense. I know it runs through Levine and DeRozan, and they can get buckets when they like, but then going out at the other end, can they defend against other teams? We've already seen in the preseason that they've allowed a lot of points in a lot of their games, but it'll be interesting to see as long as Levine, DeRozan, and Vucevic can score consistently and play consistently, they should still make the playoffs, but they should be around that. They will be around that sort of 7th to 9th mark, and around that sort of space. So Levine, he averaged 24 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists. He had 20 plus points in 56 of 67 games. DeRozan, he averaged 27 plus points, 5 plus rebounds, 4 assists. Had 20 plus points in 64 of 76 games. And then Vucevic, he averaged 17 plus points and 11 rebounds. Had 15 plus points in 49 of 73 games, 8 plus rebounds in 57 of 73 games. Then also quite a few assists for all of them. A good little, tip with this one is Levine and DeRozan to have 4 plus assists each. That's a good little multi you can put together throughout because they handle all of the ball. They dish the ball to each other quite a lot. The trouble with DeRozan, he gets to that mid-range and he just scores. He doesn't really look to pass. But we'll see this season if that's once again the same. Their first week at the Heat and Wizards, and then versing the Cavs and the Celtics. So a pretty tough first week, and we'll really see. They could be 1-3, they could be 3-1 by the end of it, just depending on how those teams go. Obviously, their over/under this season is actually 42.5. So as we said, we sort of see them dropping off as well. That's 4 less than they actually got to last season. So we'll see how they go. As we've already mentioned in the East, we see teams ahead of them like the 76ers, Celtics, Cavs, Nets, Heat, Bucks, Raptors, and they're on par with potentially the Hawks. So that's 9 teams, and there's obviously only 10 teams can make that with the play-in. So it'll be interesting to see where they fit in that mold and can they win enough games throughout the season to maybe a 5th or a 6th. But as we said, we see them 7th to 9th. A couple of little insights. So DeRozan, Levine, and Vucevic, 20 plus points in a little 3-leg multi is always handy. We've already mentioned the 4 plus assists and 4 plus rebounds for DeRozan and Levine. But then losses on the road and wins at home as well. They're a team that likes to win at home, but then they go on the road and they aren't as successful with their depth. Next team, so the Cleveland Cavaliers, a team we see obviously having a big jump this season. They were 44-38 last season, which was already a big jump, which is good for 9th in the East. 107 plus points per game, so a lot lower because their defense is better. 44 rebounds and 25 assists. They obviously added someone notable, Donovan Mitchell, to the lineup, which is huge. Obviously, Colin Sexton does go out, but Sexton's good, but he's no Mitchell good, and they went out and looked for that, end of game scorer or clutch time scorer, or when they need a basket, who do they go to? They can go to Mitchell now. Garland's great, Levert's great, Mobley's great, Allen's great, but they don't have that, the dog in them to just give me the ball and let me score. So on the bench, they've also got a Okoro, Love, and then Neto, so a bit of depth there as well, and then obviously Osman and then Robin Lopez to sort of round it out a bit of depth there. But as long as they can stay healthy, they should be sort of that 3 to 6 mark in the East, and around that sort of 46, 47 wins mark. Obviously, looking at Donovan Mitchell last season, he averaged 25 plus points, 4 rebounds, 5 assists, 20 plus points in 52 of 67 games. Darius Garland was really good for the Cavs, 20 plus points average, 3 plus rebounds and 8 plus assists. Look for his assists to increase again with Mitchell playing off the ball. Mobley and Allen once again taking some leaps in that pick and roll. And then LeVert, hopefully he gets a whole season in. He's had a bit of injury across the last few seasons. But if he can get a full season in, the Cavs are super dangerous with obviously quite a few scorers in that lineup. Allen, he averaged 16 plus points and 10 plus rebounds, so double-doubles for Allen throughout the season. Mobley averaged 15 plus points and 8 plus rebounds, so obviously the length of Mobley. Also looking at his blocks as well. Super long defender, and with Allen potentially being the first rim protector or, taking the big man one-on-one, Mobley a lot of the time comes on help side to help out on defense and gets a lot of clean blocks. Their first week at the Raptors and Bulls, then versing the Magic and the Wizards. So those first 2 games will be super good, and then the Wizards and Magic should be easy wins for the Cavs if they look to go deep this season. Last but not least, a few insights. So obviously Garland's assists to increase, Mitchell's points, Allen double-double throughout the year, Mobley 15 plus points, especially if he potentially is coming off the bench to add a bit of depth. Their over-under is 47.5 wins. We see that just going over. So that 47 to 50 mark is where we see them land, just because they've got that. The Donovan Mitchell, I guess, brings them that end of game. Went in a tight game. Who do we go to? We give it to Mitchell. Last season, they were losing those games because they had no knock on Darius Garland, but they would have to go through Garland or they go through LeVert, and they're just not that end of game scorer like Donovan Mitchell is. We've already seen it in the playoffs from him. We've seen it throughout the seasons. He's obviously got the Jazz to where they were. Now he's on the Cavs, and hopefully he can do the same thing for them. Moving on, the Dallas Mavericks. So 52-30, fourth in the West, lost to the Warriors in round 3. 108 points per game last season, 43 rebounds, 23 assists. Their roster, how that's looking, they've added Christian Wood, which is a good add, and they've also added JaVale McGee. So they've added some length, but once again, this team's just built around Luka Doncic. Now, he got them to where they were last season, which was 4th in the West. Obviously, they lost to the eventual title winners, the Warriors. Luka averaged 28 points, 9 plus rebounds, and 8 plus assists. Another really good season from him. 25 plus points in 45 of 65 games, 8 plus rebounds in 48 of 65 games, 8 plus assists in 40 of 65 games. Christian Wood's the other one for them. Now, he might come off the bench to start just because of his defense, but he also gives them that option off the bench. He averaged 17 plus points and 10 plus rebounds last season for the Rockets. The key games in the first week or so, they're at the Suns, they're versus the Grizzlies, they're at the Pelicans. 3 real tough games. So the Suns, we know how they've gone last season in the playoffs, and they'll want to sort of revenge season or to come back and do what they need to do. The Grizzlies, obviously the young, exciting team that had a lot of wins last season, and then the Pelicans with Zion and a healthy team, they'll also be dangerous. How we see them going, what does their starting lineup look like? That's really what it means to us. Is Wood coming off the bench? How does their defense look again? They were obviously super strong in that area last season, and that's why they got to where they did. Everyone bought in on defense, including Luka. A couple of insights, their total points under. So teams' total points under in Mavericks games, obviously because they stress defense. Luka, Wood, McGee over on rebounds once again. Obviously, Bullock, Finney-Smith, Hardaway Jr. actually playing and hopefully healthy this season brings another dimension. Dinwiddie potentially off the bench, or does he start at the 2 guard? We're not too sure. Kleber off the bench can do a role. They've got a lot of good role players. Everyone knows their position, their role, what they need to do each game, which is why we see the Dallas Mavericks in the playoffs once again. Moving on, the Denver Nuggets. So 48-34 last season. Mind you, that was without Porter Jr. and Murray. So really just Jokic taking that team to where they were. And they lost in the first round to the Warriors, eventual title wins. Averaged 112 points per game, 44 rebounds, 27 assists. Now they added Brown, KCP, DeAndre Jordan, Smith. So they've got some good depth there. Obviously they lose Monte Morris and Will Barton, but they get a healthy Porter Jr. They get a healthy Murray. Looking at them in the preseason, I mean, that's all they need. They are a smoky this season to go all the way, because, if Jokic is healthy throughout the whole season, but then he also has a piece of, Murray and Porter Jr. and the depth they've got, They're one of our smokies this season that could do some damage as long as everyone stays healthy. Like their starting lineup: Murray, KCP, Porter Jr., Gordon, Jokic, and then Bones Highland, also a smoky for Sixth Man of the Year. Bruce Brown, Jeff Green, DeAndre Jordan, Devon Reed took a jump last year. They've also got Ish Smith there. They've got some really, really good depth that they can sort of rely on if a couple of players do go down throughout the season. But if they are to win a title this season, they need everyone healthy. Jokic, his stats, he averaged 27 plus points, 13 plus rebounds, and 7 plus assists, 20 plus points in 66 of 74 games, 10 plus rebounds in 66 of 74 games, 6 plus assists in 61 of 74 games. So key games in the first week or so will be at the Jazz and Warriors, and then versus the Thunder. So the Jazz should be an easy win. The Warriors will be a really competitive game, and then the Thunder. So they should be 2-1, if not 3-0, by the end of the first week. How we see them going, so the over-under is 50.5 wins. We feel like if everyone is healthy, that should be a lock, and they should definitely win, 52, 53 games, especially in a West that's potentially, for once, a bit weaker than the East. So a lot of those teams down the bottom, like, you got the Jazz, you've got a lot of teams like the Kings. Who else is there? There's a lot of teams in that sort of West lower end that are the lower end teams that they should be able to get easy wins. The Thunder as well. A lot of easy wins in that Western Conference. Last but not least, a couple of little insights. So Jokic and assists to increase this season because he's got Murray and Porter Jr. back. So, and then Bones Highland to make another good jump. So his points off the bench will be interesting. Obviously, seeing how many minutes he gets first up. That'll be a really interesting case study to have a look at. Moving on, Detroit Pistons. This will be a quick one. 104 points per game, 43 rebounds, 23 assists. They were 23 and 59 last season, 14th in the East. Their roster, they've added Bogdanovic, Burks, Noel. Ivy is a rookie to watch. Key player stats: Cunningham averaged 17.55. He should make another jump this season. People are sort of backing him in for maybe most improved player, but on a team like Detroit that potentially will be around that 23, 24, 25 wins most likely again, it shouldn't be most improved player from a team like that. That's our opinion anyway. Sadiq Bey should make another dunk, 16 points and 5 rebounds. And then obviously adding Bogdanovic, he averaged 15 points last season for the Jazz. Key games in the first week: Magic, Knicks, Pacers. Probably won't look too much into it. Maybe look into Cade Cunningham's points per game. But that's really about it for that squad. Quick one over. Moving on next to, obviously, the Golden State Warriors. So 53 and 29, third in the West, but won the championship. 111 points per game last season, 45 rebounds, 27 assists per game. Their roster, obviously, they lost Peyton Porter Jr., but added DiVincenzo and have Wiseman back healthy again. Steph Curry averaged 25 plus points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists. Wiggins took a jump last season, 17 points and 4 rebounds, but we really saw him come to fruition in the playoffs when, Curry was guarded tight, Thompson was guarded tight. Everyone else was sort of worrying about what those two were doing. Wiggins then stepped up in the playoffs and really helped them win a championship. It was also big on the boards as well when they went small ball and Draymond Green was potentially in and out of the game. Their first week: Lakers, Nuggets, Kings, Suns. Obviously, we saw the drama with Draymond Green. They'll probably squash that, but it'll be really interesting to see how they go in that first week or two. Jordan Poole will take another jump. We'll be interested to see if he will just run that second group. It'll still have the 25 to 30 minutes, but it'll be interesting to see if he finishes the game alongside, Curry, Thompson, Wiggins, Poole, potentially Green at the 5, and they play that small ball to finish the game. But it's interesting to see how the Warriors will go this season again. They could well win the title once again. They've got the team to do so, especially if Wiseman comes back healthy and they've just got depth and they know what they need to do to keep on going. But it just depends if the will is still there and the drive is still there to once again be a championship team and championship contender. Moving on, the Houston Rockets, another quick one with these guys. So 109 points per game, 42 rebounds, 23 assists on average. They added Burke, Chris, and Boban. And then rookies to watch: Smith Jr. and Washington Jr. But we see another clunky season for them, just with Jalen Green and Kevin Porter will take another jump, but how much depth they have. This is their starting lineup: Porter Jr., Green, Gordon's in his back into the creative, they're still good. They've got Jabari Smith Jr. And Senguan as their sort of starting lineup. Christopher come off the bench along with Tate and Favors. It's just not a lineup we can see them doing a lot of damage. They potentially will be down the bottom of the West once again. Not sure how many wins, but Jalen Green averaged 17 points last season. Kevin Porter Jr. averaged 15 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists. Jalen Green will take another jump. Should be around that 22, 23 points mark, you'd say, with a lot more ball in hand and a lot more game to his repertoire. Obviously, in a team like that as well, that'll probably all-out attack. And then their first week is Hawks, Grizzlies, Bucks, Jazz. So, Hawks 50-50 because it's at the Hawks versus the Grizzlies. They'll get smashed, Bucks get smashed. Jazz and Jazz will be an interesting one because we see the Jazz being that sort of lower-end team as well. Indiana Pacers, another quick one here. 111 points, 43 rebounds, 25 assists last season. That's on average. No more Sabonis, Brogdon, Warren, so obviously cleaned house. They have added Halliburton and Hield, so a good bit of depth end of last season. They obviously added them in before the trade deadline. Halliburton averaged 15 points, 4 rebounds, 8 assists. He should really be a 22 points, 10 assists guy this season. Buddy Hield averaged 15 points and 4 rebounds. We should see his points increase as well. A lot of that for both of them was averaging on, both the Kings and then at the Pacers. The Wizards, Spurs, and Pistons, so quite an easy start to the season. Just quickly running over their depth and having a look at that one. So Halliburton, Durante, Hield, Smith, Turner. With Smith and Turner, their defense should improve. They should have a better defensive team this season. Obviously, McConnell coming off the bench, Brissett as well, and Jackson. So they've actually got quite a lot of length on the team and quite a lot of good rim protection. But can they do it around the rest of the floor with, Halliburton, Durante, and Hield as well? But there'll be an interesting sort of case to see if they can make a jump with those players, or they need to add another couple of pieces, or can Smith and Turner help Halliburton and Hield really run that offense? Moving on. LA Clippers, so 42-40 last season, 9th in the West. That was obviously pretty much without Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. So them both back and adding John Wall. They're another smoky this season. I've heard a lot of people say that it's a do or die season for them. Obviously, it's, I think, the 4th season that PG and Kawhi have been there, and they haven't really made a dent in the playoffs as of yet. Obviously, a lot of injuries. They did get close in the bubble, but that was in the bubble. 108 points per game last season, 44 rebounds, 24 assists. Obviously, adding back those 3 players, so Wall, Leonard, and George, their points should increase, and their speed of the game should increase, and they're easy buckets, and they all can also defend. So they're one of the ones to watch this season. Now, their depth is... They obviously showed they had depth last season, but it depends if they take another leap. Kawhi in 2020 and 2021, he averaged 24 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists, had 20-plus points in a lot of his games, 4-plus rebounds in a lot of his games. Paul George last season averaged 24 points, 6 rebounds, and 5 assists. It'd be interesting to see how they both pair together, and adding Wall in there as well to potentially play with them at the start, but then also run that second unit with Reggie Jackson or how all that sort of works in. Their first week at Lakers, Kings versus Suns, and then the Thunder twice. So their first week will look really interesting. But the Clippers for us should be around that 3 to 6 mark. They should be able to get 50 wins with all those 3 guys healthy and potentially make a dent in the playoffs. Once again, as I mentioned, the West, there'll be a lot of easy wins up for grab in the West, depending on health and depending on those lower teams. The other LA teams are the Lakers. They were 33-49, 11th in the West last season. Obviously, LeBron was injured. AD was injured. Russell Westbrook played actually a lot of games, but copped a lot of criticism for his season. I actually thought he was all right. With the pieces he had around him, he was doing as much as he could, and he always brought 100% effort. 112 points, 44 rebounds, 24 assists. Watch that points per game potentially decrease because they'll drive defense with Davis on the floor. With the depth they've added, they had a Beverly, Schroeder, JTA, so Toscano Anderson from the Warriors, Walker, Bryant, and Troy Brown Jr. So another off season where they've churned and burned players, and then Westbrook still 50-50. A lot of trade rumors, but we won't get into that. We see him playing for the start of the season, as well as Carmelo Anthony. He might end up somewhere else. LeBron last season, the games he did play, which was 56, he averaged 30 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists. We chuckle at that because obviously how deep he is into his career, but we can't see that changing. Anthony Davis averaged 23 points, 9 rebounds in the games he played. He only managed 40 games. Russell Westbrook, 18, 7, and 7. He had 15 plus points in 56 of 78 games. So obviously playing 78 games is super impressive for a side that hardly had everyone on the court at all times. Their first week at the Warriors versus the Clippers and then the Blazers. So 2 good games first up. We actually see them going to the Warriors and potentially, I'm not sure if the ring ceremony is on that day, but it potentially is. It may be all a bit too much for the Warriors, and I reckon the Lakers might actually upset them. But how we see them going, they should really, with everyone healthy and Anthony Davis playing consistently, as he said, that's his goal this season, is to play as many games as possible, that being all 82. We'll wait and see. They should really finish around that sort of 5th to 8th mark. I see them being maybe 7th or 8th, but if everyone's healthy, they could be around 3rd or 4th. You just don't know with the West, and the health really panning out in the West. That's what's really going to matter. But yeah, we'll see how they go. The Memphis Grizzlies, 56 and 26 last season, which was good for second in the West. Probably surprised a lot of people. They obviously beat the Timberwolves in the first round, and then lost in the second round. They had a Danny Green, lost Melton, but a lot of their players like Morant, Jackson Jr., Adams, everyone once again will take a leap and combine together again. he averaged 27 points, 5 rebounds, and 6 assists. 20 plus points in 46 or 57 games. The big thing for is playing a lot more games. So only 57 games last season. He can bump that up to 72, 73, 74. The Grizzlies should win that same amount of games again. Bane averaged 18 points, and he will take another jump this season. He should have been most improved last season. Obviously went to his teammate. Jaren Jackson Jr., if he stays healthy, which he did last season, a lot of the season, but his big thing is staying out of foul trouble. So averaged 16 points and 5 rebounds last season, but a lot of the games, he played 78, but I think he would have averaged a lot less minutes because of the amount of foul trouble he was in. Key games of the first week, so versus the Knicks, Rockets, Mavs, and Nets. Should be a pretty good week for them. Knicks and Rockets should be a lock. Mavericks and Nets will be a lot harder of a game, but they should be around that sort of. See them dropping a little bit down just because they had such a good season last season. But that 3rd to 6th mark, once again, should be where they fall. Moving on, so Miami Heat. First in the East, 53 and 29, 110 points, 43 rebounds, 25 assists on average. Obviously, Oladipo being healthy will be a big boost to the roster this season. They didn't really add too many pieces. Obviously, gave an extension to Hero and hoping for a lot more improvement in health through Jimmy Butler, Bam, and Tyler. Butler, he only managed 57 games, but he averaged 21, 5, and 5. Bam only managed 64 games, still managed 18, 9, and 5. Hero, he played 54 games, 15, 5, and 3. So if those 3 players can, get around that 75, 76 games mark, there's no reason why the Heat shouldn't be that 1st to 4th in the East once again. Now, obviously, the Heat's depth is, the East depth is there, and we've already sort of discussed that. But they should, with the depth they have, be around that mark once again. Obviously, they win a lot of games at home, which really does help, and they can go on the road and sort of bond as well. Key games of the first week, so Bulls, Celtics, and the Raptors ×2. The first 4 are all at home, so they should win all of those potentially. Obviously, some tough games, but they're at home for the Heat, so they're super good at home. Moving on to the Milwaukee Bucks. They finished 3rd in the East. They had a record of 51 and 31. Lost to the Celtics 3-4, 115 plus points per game, which is one of the highest in the league, 46 plus rebounds and 23 assists. Much the same roster again, so they've really been building across the last 5 years, keeping that same roster. So unlike the Lakers, you see have churn and burn each season, and there's inconsistency there since they won the championship. You've seen the Bucks just hold that same group together, and that'll boost them going forward. Like, they'll win games no matter what because of that. Because they've got that chemistry, because they've had that team together for a while, because everyone knows what they're doing. They get back Lopez full-time this year. Last year, they didn't really have him, so locking down the paint and defense will be a lot better for them. They've also got the same depth, so the same guys coming off the bench, running the same minutes, a lot of the same time. Everyone knows their role in that team. Bucks are one of our smokies, once again, for the championship. championship just because they've got Giannis, they've got Holiday, they've got Chris Middleton. If those guys can stay healthy, like Holiday only had 59 games last year, Middleton had 68, Giannis had 61. So they didn't play a full season, but they still managed to be 51 and 31. If they can play more games, obviously they'll end up higher. But seeding doesn't really matter to them. It's all about when they get to the playoffs and how healthy they are in the playoffs to make a run for a championship. Giannis, he had 28, 11, and 5 last season, so averaged that. 25 plus points in 55 of 61 games, which is super impressive. 8 plus rebounds in 56 of 61. 4 plus assists, that's where he really improved his game last season. So looking at him for 6 plus, 7 plus, 8 plus assists in certain games could be a real good, especially against teams who sort of clog the paint against him. That's a really good chance for him to look, drive and then dish out to your Middletons, your Holidays. Middleton, he averaged 20 points, 6 rebounds, 5 assists. That's sort of standard for him. Holiday, 17, 4, and 6. If he can bump those numbers up in support of Giannis and Middleton, we'll see how that goes. Key games in the first week, they're at the 76ers, so that'll be a good test first up. Rockets, Nets, Knicks, so then they go out. They verse all the East teams coming in. How we see them going, they should be around that 1st to 4th mark in the East. We can't see them being any lower than that as long as everyone's healthy. But as mentioned, if all those players can stay healthy throughout the season and get a lot more games than they did last season, the bench will provide for them as well. They should be once again high up there and a bit of a smoky for the championship. Moving on, so the Minnesota Timberwolves, they average 115 plus points per game, 44 plus rebounds per game, 25 plus assists. Their roster, so the addition of Gobert, Rivers, Pascal, Anderson, Forbes, so they're very deep roster now. So obviously adding some defense with Gobert in the middle there. Obviously the Jazz flicking him off. But then you've got, Towns, Edwards should take another leap. Russell needs to play more games. Only played 65 last season, but, was in and out a lot. If Edwards can take another leap, he averaged 19 points last season. He should look to average, 24, 25, 26, being the first pick a couple of years ago. He should really be higher up than what he is. But he should take another leap. A lot of people are looking at him for the most improved player this season, which I think is a good shout. But he should be. He takes that, 3rd-year leap, 2nd-year leap, 4th-year leap, moving forward. So Towns, he averaged 24, 10, and 4. Russell, 19 and 5. Edwards, as mentioned, 19 and 4 rebounds. Gobert, 14 and 13. It'll be interesting to see how Towns and Gobert work together. I know Gobert's more of a paint player and Towns more works on the edge. So it'll be interesting to see how that sort of gels together. Their first week, Thunder, Jazz, Thunder, Spurs times 2. That should be 5-0, and that should be a lot of blowouts, in our opinion, with the team they've got. But it'll be a perfect time for them to gel in together and hopefully get a lot of big wins in that first week or so. Moving on, New Orleans Pelicans, 36 and 46 last season, and this shows where the West is. They finished 8th in the West and lost to the Suns in round 1. That just showed they were sort of super in the play-in and they got through. 109 points per game, 45 rebounds, 25 assists. Obviously, that was no Zion last season. He looks fit and healthy. They added CJ McCollum towards the back end of last season as well. Ingram took another step. So we see this team as being super good this season. Like, they've got the depth there. They've had the players playing last season, the rookies. They've sort of blooded them, freshened them up, improved them once again over the preseason. Their starting lineup, CJ Ingram, Jones, Williamson, Valanciunas. So off the bench, Alvarado, Graham, Murphy, Nance, Hayes. That is one of the deeper teams in the league, we believe. All those 10 players are proven players last season. And, if Zion can stay healthy, they can really, finish from that 5th to 7th mark, we believe, potentially 5th or 6th, if they get a consistent team, consistency throughout the season together. Ingram, he averaged 22, 5, and 5. McCollum, he averaged 22, 4, and 5. Williamson, in his 2022-2021 season, he averaged 27, 7, and 3, playing 61 games. So if he can put another season together like that together and be the leader of this team, along with the jump that Ingram took, and then adding a veteran head, CJ McCollum, who can sort of run that point along with Ingram, they should do some damage this season. Moving on to the Knicks. 37 and 45, 11th in the East last season. 109 points, 46 rebounds, 21 assists. The addition of Brunson, that's a big one. So Brunson, Randall, and Barrett obviously running that team. Brunson only averaged 16 points, 3 rebounds, and 4 assists. he is out Smokey for the most improved player this season. He's on a team in New York, so he gets a lot of vision. If he can jump up from 16 to like 22, 23 points, we saw in the playoffs he could do so. So the first 2 games when Luka didn't play, I'm pretty sure he had, 28, 29, 30 points, along with the assist there as well. If he can do that in New York, along with RJ taking a jump and then Randall improving as a playmaker and player and rebounder and on defense as well, those 3 should work well together. Our biggest concern for them, I'm just opening up the depth chart, is that exact thing. So their starting lineup: Brunson, Fournier, RJ, Robinson, and Randall. That's good. Rose, can he stay healthy? Quentin Grimes, same sort of thing. Toppin, he's looked good. Emmanuel Quickly, he's also looked good. And then there's Cam Reddish as well. Does he play? Can he fit into this offense and defense? The biggest thing for them has been defensive consistency, but then scoring on the other end. So they can go for stretches, and we remember vividly a game against the 76ers and Knicks. They just went for a stretch of like 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes without scoring. And that's our worry, but hopefully Jalen Brunson brings that effect to go, hey, give me the ball, I can score. RJ Barrett takes another leap and says, hey, give me the ball, I can score. Those players together. So Brunson 16, 13, 4, Randall 29, 5, Barrett 25, 3. So apparently he's looking to take another jump this season, all reports. But if he doesn't jump from 20 to 25, I don't think he can win a most improved. I think you're looking at a Brunson who jumps from 16 to 23 points and then 4 assists, 7 assists per game, which is quite a good jump, as well as he's in New York, so he's getting a lot of eyes on him. Their first week at the Grizzlies, versing the Pistons, Magic, Hornets. So theoretically, if they've got the side to do anything this season, they should be 3-1 by the end of that sort of run and the next time we chat. Moving on, OKC Thunder will just be a quick one as well. 24 and 58, 14th in the West, 103 points per game, 45 rebounds, 22 assists. Their depth chart, so obviously SGA and Giddey running this team. SGA averaged 24, 5 and 5, but once again wasn't on the court enough, only 56 games. And then Giddey 12, 7, 6, so rebounds and assists for him. 15 plus points in 20 of 54 games, so his points aren't exactly there yet, but only 54 games. Their depth chart just quickly, so SGA, Giddey, Dort, Baisley, Robinson, Earl. They're obviously now without their number 1 pick, Chet Holmgren, so he's out for the whole season, which is another number 1 pick that goes to OKC and then is out for a whole season, which is a sort of interesting concept. But we can't see them doing too much this season, maybe causing an upset here or there. Their first week at the Wolves, Nuggets versus the Wolves, and then the Clippers ×2, so they may be 0 and 5 after their first week or so. Orlando Magic, obviously getting the first pick. Obviously Pablo, he looks good. 104 points, 44 rebounds, 23 assists. Carter Jr., Anthony, Wagner, and then everything Pablo in. They should be okay throughout the season. We can't see them doing much without another year or two in those guys and sort of forming that connection together. It's depth where they struggle. So they actually didn't have a lot of their guys playing last season that are a lot of their defenders. So look at their starting lineup: Carter Jr., Pablo, Wagner, Suggs, Fultz, but Suggs looked to have gone down with an ankle injury. You got Anthony, Harris, Isaac, and Bamba. So that's actually quite some good depth. And then Ross as well. But how do those guys all mold together will be the big question. Moving on to the Phoenix Suns. So a team that was quite disappointing in the playoffs last season, obviously going out. They finished 64 and 18, which was first in the West. 114 points per game last season. 45 rebounds, 27 assists. Loss of potentially Crowder. Addition of Lee, Jackson, and Okogie. Booker, he averaged 26, 5 and 4. Paul was 14, 4, 10. DeAndre Ayton, 17 and 10. 15 plus points in 40 and 58. Another player we look to obviously wants a big jump this season in DeAndre Ayton. And then Miles Bridges, 14, 4, 2. Their first weeks, Mavericks, Blazers, Clippers, Warriors. Them this season, they're hard to judge because they had so many wins last season and then just bowed out in the playoffs and they weren't really up to it, to be honest. So it depends if they look at a sort of Bucks team that builds throughout the season, gets everything right, and then is ready for the playoffs, or they just win as many games once again throughout the season, and then go into playoffs with how they did last season. It'll be interesting to see. Obviously, a little bit of talk throughout the pre-season or the last few weeks about the coach and everything like that, but Monty Williams is a good coach. Apparently he's just giving everyone space and, hopefully cracking back into it. But you've also got the top-end drama with the owner about trying to sell. But that's all sort of news in the ether, and it shouldn't really affect the playing group, but it may early on in the season. Moving on to the Philadelphia 76ers. These guys, and we'll cover it off soon, but are our smoky for the championship. So 51-31, fourth in the East last season, lost to the Heat 2-4, averaged 109 points per game, 42 rebounds, 23 assists. Addition of Harrell, House Jr., Melton, and Tucker. So some real dogs on defense, which is good. Their depth chart, which is super impressive in our eyes. Maxey, who took a huge jump last season without Harden, obviously brings back in Harden. Harden looks fit and healthy. Harris, he's now that third or fourth string at times to Maxey and Harden and Embiid. And then you've got PJ Tucker, who brings that defensive grit to work next to Embiid. So, you've got Tucker working and hustling on the exterior, and then you've got Embiid on the interior. And then obviously Embiid doing what he does. On the bench, you've got Melton. So Melton from the Grizzlies, Korkmaz, Thibault, Niang, Reed. But you've also got House Jr., you've got Harrell. There's a lot of good depth there for them, and we see them going deep this season. This is the season they do it. Embiid played an MVP season last season, didn't get it. We hopefully see that once again from him. He also played 68 games, so I think that's the most he's played in quite a few seasons, which was super impressive. Harden only played 65 games. If he can get that up to 78, 79 games with his health, that'll be impressive. You got Harris and Maxey. So Embiid, his average is 30, 11, and 4. Harden, 22, 7, and 10. Harris 17, 6, and 3, and Maxey 17, 3, and 4. So a lot of points there, but also a lot of defense on that team as well. Their first week, so the Celtics, Bucks, Spurs, Pacers. So a couple of good games first up versus the Celtics and the Bucks. How we see them going this season, they should be first to third, anywhere around that. So they're on par with your Nets and the Celtics, and they should want the number 1 seed, as well as the Heat as well. So that 1 to 4 range, your 76ers, your Celtics, your Nets, and your Heat, and potentially your Cavs as well. So, it's a tight top end of that East Conference, and they'll want to win as many games as possible. Another quick idea, so the Portland Trailblazers actually have added quite a few good pieces. They were 27 and 56, 13th in the West last season. No Lillard. Lillard played hardly no games last season, was out, sort of got himself fixed up, probably preparing for this season. So look at him this season to come out and kill it. Simons took a big jump. Hart took a big jump. They bring in Grant, so Jeremy Grant from the Pistons. They also bring Payton, so brings a lot of defense. And then, you guys that played the back end of last season had a lot of improvement because they got that time on the court. So that'll be an interesting concept as well. Jeremy Grant, he averaged 19 and 4. Lillard averaged 24, 4, and 7, but hardly played. Key games of the first week. So they're at the Kings, they're versus the Suns, at the Lakers versus the Nuggets. How we see them going, I still can't see them doing much without, Grant's good, Nurkic is good, Hart's good, Simons is good, but there's no second piece to Lillard. Like he had with CJ McCollum, that I don't know which one of those guys can average 24, 25 points alongside Lillard, but we'll get a fair idea earlier in the season anyway about those sort of guys there. Sacramento Kings 30 and 52, 12th in the West. Another team we can't see doing much. They've added Monk and Lyles, which could be depth, but they've still got the key pieces of Fox, Sabonis, and Barnes, and those three guys, good as they may, they're not your top tier trio that can make a dent throughout the season enough to get them into the playoffs. They'll be good at times and probably cause some upsets, especially at home, but we can't see them doing much. Fox averaged 23, 3, 5, Sabonis 18, 12, 5. Unless both of them can bump that up, Fox maybe 26 points per game, Sabonis being that 22, 23 points with a couple more assists running it out of the post. Maybe Barnes averages a few more points. We just can't see them doing much once again. Their first week, Blazers, Clippers, Warriors, Grizzlies. Moving on the Spurs, much of the same. Evan Popovich just come out and said, hey, don't expect us to do much this season. They've obviously lost Murray, which is their key player. Johnson being their main player, averaging 17, 6, 2. Their first week looks like Hornets, Pacers, 76ers, Wolves, but look for the Spurs to be a team that gets blown out quite a bit. But they've got quite a lot of good young players who will play with a lot of energy. So, there may be some close games, there may be some big games, blowouts, but they'll be around that lower end of the West once again. Moving on to the Toronto Raptors, who have a great starting 5, but falls away really quickly, which is our biggest concern. So Siakam, VanVleet, Barnes, average 22, 8 and 5, 24 and 6. And then Barnes averaged 15, 7 and 3. Their first couple of games, Cavs, Nets, and then the Heat twice. So all 4 games will be a good test to see whereabouts they're at. Obviously being at home in Toronto, back there full time, that should be a big benefit to them, and they should win a lot of games at home. The insight for them is, they're a high scoring team, but against the high scoring teams, they should all score 20 plus points. So that's the 3 to 4 main players. So combining that all together is quite a good bet in those bigger games. Moving on, 2 teams to go. So the Jazz, 49 and 33, 5th in the West, obviously cleaned house. So no Gobert, Bogdanovich, Mitchell. They've added Beasley, Horton Tucker, Johnson, Markin, Sexton, Vanderbilt. So a complete haul over of their roster. They've got Conley and Clarkson still. Will Clarkson be moved on? We're not too sure. Key games in the first week, Nuggets, Wolves, Pelicans, Rockets. Lacking a bit of star power, but Sexton and Markin will look to improve and grow this season. We potentially see them out of the playoffs though this season, maybe around that sort of 10th to 12th mark. Last but not least, the Wizards. So 12th in the East last season, 35 and 47. 108 points per game, 43 rebounds, 25 assists. How their roster looks, so they've got Beal, Kuzma, Porzingis. They've added a couple of good pieces with Monte Morris and a couple other guys. But once again, it just depends on the health of those 3 main guys. So they've got Barton and Morris. But yeah, once again, Beal, can he be healthy? He only played 40 games last season. Porzingis, same thing, played 51 games and hasn't played more than 70 games, I think, throughout his whole career, maybe his first couple seasons. But can they be healthy? Pacers, Bulls, Cavs, Pistons in their first week. As we sort of touched on, all matters on health. That is the 30 teams previewed. We'll sort of cut that up anyway and sort of add the notes in the show notes. We'll move on quickly. So season awards, the NBA championship, our favorite is the Milwaukee Bucks. We sort of touched on it with them in their preview about how they've kept the same group together, and that matters going forward. Like, the Lakers have chopped and changed, the Nets haven't had consistency. The Heat have stayed the same and they have a lot of that same championship DNA. But we see the Bucks being, our favourite to win the championship once again. And our Smokey being the 76ers. So, as the 76ers, and the Denver Nuggets. They're 17 bucks. Bucks to 750. We just see the 76ers, it's their time this season. It'll be probably one of those two will play against each other in the Eastern Conference Finals or around that part. And if they can get through to the end, they should beat out a Western Conference team. The NBA Western Conference, our favourite to come out is the Golden State Warriors, and then our Smokey is the Grizzlies. So both those sides, and then also the Denver Nuggets being a Smokey in there as well. Eastern Conference to come out of there is the Milwaukee Bucks and 76ers. Now moving into the player awards. So the player awards, we'll just quickly have a look. And a good sort of note to mention about the player awards and how that's priced out on any sort of bookie is the bookie sets the top player as to who they can make the most money out of. So there's no stats or anything behind, Luka Doncic being the regular season MVP. He's actually been that favourite for the last 2 or 3 seasons because he's the favourite that they know they can make dollars off. So Giannis is second, Embiid, Durant, Jokic. Now, is it going to be one of them? Most likely. I mean, that top 5, Doncic, Giannis, Embiid, Durant, Jokic. Once again, Jokic could be going for 3 in a row. He's got the team around him too. But our favourite would be Giannis. Obviously, we've got the Bucks winning the championship, so he needs to be there the whole season. He looks fit. He looks healthy. He looks ready to go. He's just come back from playing some more basketball for Greece, so he's ready to go. Ash Smokey would be Ja Morant. So Ja Morant obviously running that Grizzlies team. They were really good last season. He didn't play enough games to win it last season, but obviously got the most improved. He would be our sort of Smokey. So once again, that's Giannis' favourite, Ja Morant being the Smokey. Moving on to the other awards. So we've got Rookie of the Year. Obviously, Paulo from, I'm not sure how you say it, but I think that's it. From the Magic, you've got Ivy, Murray, Smith. We don't know too much about the rookie class this year, but the Magic look to have it in the bag this season. Ivy, depending on what he does with the Pistons. And there could be a Smokey in there that comes up and pops up that plays a lot more minutes than anyone else, but it's all sort of based on minutes for those guys and who plays the most and who can average the most points. Sixth Man of the Year is an interesting one because, Jordan Poole's the favourite, probably because he will be sixth man most of the year. Christian Wood, We don't know if he'll start halfway through the season. Tyler Hero's another good one. He'll probably come off the bench throughout the season. Our favourite would be probably Tyler Hero at $14. Once again, he will play off the bench most of the season. Another good shout is Bones Highland. So Bones Highland, he's at $18. So you got Hero $14, Highland at $18. They're two of our sort of, I guess not shoo-ins, but two of our favourites to win Sixth Man of the Year. Most improved player, we sort of touched on it in the Knicks, but we believe it could be Jalen Brunson. So he's a good shout at $21. Anthony Edwards is favourite at $8.50. You got Maxey, Williamson, and Halliburton. Williamson's a weird one because he averaged 27 points in his 2022-2021 season. So I don't know what he would have to do to be the most improved player because he didn't play last season. So I think Edwards will make a jump, but he should make the jump. I think Jalen Brunson's a good shout because if he can average 7 more points in the last season and 2-3 more assists, whereas Edwards might average 6+ points. But it also depends where their teams may end up as well. Like, can their teams end up higher? So our favourite Jalen Brunson, a smoky for it as well as potentially like a Michael Porter Jr. or Cade Cunningham, or even like a Halliburton. But our favourite Jalen Brunson. Last but not least, Defensive Player of the Year. So it's got Gobert, Bam, Robert Williams, Giannis, Green, Bridges, McCall. Obviously, we saw Smart win it last year. He's actually at $21, but we feel like it could be Anthony Davis this year. If he plays as many games as he wants to. Bam's also a good shout, playing more games. Not sure how Gobert will go being in the Timberwolves, but we see it being either Anthony Davis or Bam. So sort of Bam's probably our favourite, and then Anthony Davis probably a smoky around that part. But look, that's all for this episode. We've got, we covered off player awards, season awards, and then all the 30 teams preview. Sort of moving forward, we'll look to cover off the first week in episode 2. So, previewing the upcoming week, reviewing the week just gone. And then moving forward, we're looking at that every Monday and Tuesday. Signing out. Thank you for listening in. If you are still here, feel free to contact me through Sports Tips by Jellyman if you want any more insights coming into this season. Thank you.